Quickly, let me show you what James Hollis, PhD, says the shadow is. He's a Jungian psychologist. He says one of Jung's most important concepts is the idea of the shadow. The shadow is not synonymous with evil, though great evil can surely come from our shadows. Rather, I would define the shadow as those parts of us or of our groups and organizations that, when brought to consciousness, are troubling to our concepts of ourselves, contradictory to our professed values, or intimidating in what they might ask of our timid souls. Learning about and confronting our shadow is a central moral problem. We're going to show you how Moses had to do this in just a couple minutes. Central moral problem. This means that we have to be able to recognize our narcissistic motives, our cowardly retreats, and our slippery deal-making with our values, and still not be overwhelmed by our guilt for our unlovable parts. I have always been moved by the 2 millennia old observation of Philo of Alexandria that we should be kind because everyone we meet has a really big problem. And you'll see that on t-shirts. Be kind because everyone you meet is facing a really tough problem. Remembering that allows me to be kind to many on this earth with whom I would otherwise have conflict. But I confess that I have trouble applying it to myself, given my expectations for myself. I cannot deny what I know. I cannot exempt myself from the radical scrutiny that I apply to others, and I cannot evade the accountability for whatever spills into the world through me. Thus, I find it hard to lend myself that respect, that level of forgiveness that I can so often grant to others. Okay? So let's go back over this concept again. The shadow is things that lie in the unconscious, really, and you have to integrate these things and bring them into consciousness in order to embody meekness. What we would call meekness is what psychology calls the integrated shadow, where you recognize the unsavory parts of yourself and you've integrated them, brought them into the consciousness of who you are. And we're going to talk about how Moses did this. Okay, so he says, the shadow is not synonymous with evil, though great evil can surely come from our shadows. Rather, I would define the shadow as those parts of us or of our groups or organizations that, when brought to consciousness, are troubling to our concepts of ourselves. Sometimes a bad person who, like if you talk to a serial killer in prison, things that are good about them are in their shadow. They don't like thinking the good things about themselves, but they're there. So it's more things that are in our subconscious about ourselves, more so than things that are necessarily bad. Now, contradictory to our professed values. Often, somebody who hasn't integrated the shadow, they're going to be virtue signaling all the time, and they have actually convinced themselves that they are virtuous because they're virtue signaling. All the while, their shadow is out there, and if you push the right buttons, that shadow will come out. And the shadow will come out usually at the age level that it has enjoyed acknowledgement from your conscious mind. Okay? In other words, if you have denied the existence of what's in your shadow you're 20 years old and you've denied it for 18 years, successfully denied it, you've convinced yourself. What happens when that shadow comes out, when someone pushes you the wrong way, and that shadow comes out and you lose control, no temperance, okay? That shadow comes out as a 2-year-old and throws a tantrum like a 2-year-old because it hasn't aged with you, okay? That's why it's very important to integrate the shadow constantly and as early as possible so that it can age with your conscious parts of yourself, the parts that you acknowledge. It needs to be brought into the parts of you that you acknowledge so that it can age with you, so that if you ever have to call on it to do something for you, maybe you do have to exert violence to save your family. Well, that violence needs to be an adult, not a 2-year-old having a tantrum, not acting unwisely. So, it can be contradictory to our professed values. So a lot of Christians, we get taught what is quote unquote right and wrong. And so what happens is all the things that don't match that right and wrong, we put them away and we pretend they're not there. And then in time, we actually come into a form of psychosis or delusion where we actually think they're not there. We've forgotten them. Now, if you want to get into that concept, for those who have forgotten their shadow altogether, but it's still there and you're unconscious, you might enjoy the song by Dream Theater called Forsaken. Okay? So Forsaken by Dream Theater is to me, and I never realized how much Jungian psychology was in Dream Theater songs and I had enjoyed Dream Theater since I was introduced to it in college by my good friend Sean Brown, who unfortunately passed away in 2004 in a car accident. I never realized they were singing. I resonated a lot with what they were singing. I never realized they were basically putting lyrics to Jungian psychology until after my divorce. I started studying Jungian psychology because I finally found something that was helpful, that could actually help me live up to the values that I professed as a Christian, which the version of Christianity that I was pursuing could not help me do. That was interesting. So it's contradictory to our professed values, and it's such a way to where, because Christianity tells you to value certain things and then you don't, and you put it into this unknown area, you get into a psychosis that is, it winds up doing more harm than good sometimes. Okay? Certain versions of Christianity can do more harm than good. Immature versions of Christianity can do more harm than good. Fundamentalist versions of Christianity. And you might just want to look at the correlation of something like sexual abuse that happens in concurrence with your particular brand of Christianity to kind of tell you how healthy it is or isn't. All right. And I know there's bad actors in everything, but look at some other things as well. So, or intimidating what they might ask of our timid souls. Learn about and confronting the shadows is a central moral problem. So in order to genuinely be moral, you have to find what your shadow is, confront it, and integrate it. Bring it into part of who you are. Or you're going to wind up like this guy over here. You're going to wind up needing to act and not being able to because you don't have a shadow. All this is wrapped up in the word meekness, and people don't realize that it is. We have a guy, Moses. You may not realize what Moses is doing here. Moses has just killed a fool, and he is hiding him in the sand. You have the story of Moses in the book of Exodus, in chapter 2. Find out we have Moses, the child grew, so we have, be put into an ark. Pharaoh's daughter finds him. He winds up getting nursed by what essentially turns out to be his mother, his biological mother. The child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water. Now, it's interesting how much water is a theme of Moses' life. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, meaning the Hebrews, his brethren. And he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So, how's he feeling about himself now? And then he went out the second day. So he doesn't run off right then. He doesn't kill the man and run off. It's like, I've done something good here. He went out the second day, and behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said unto him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And they responded, you would think, he's coming to rescue. They're going to look up to me. No. Who made thee a prince and judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killedst the Egyptian? And Moses feared, and he said, surely this thing is known. Right? Now let's push the pause button. What is Moses here? Moses is a murderer. Moses killed a dude, hid his body in the sand, and went on like business as normal. Came out the next day, went home, slept, got a good night's sleep. Who knows what he did? I don't know what he did. Comes out the next day to continue observing his brethren, the Hebrews. And what's he going to do? Are you going to lead them then? Turns out Moses had an unintegrated shadow. Moses was capable of killing a person at the wrong time and had not integrated his shadow to basically kill at the right time, above board. Self-defense, justified war, something like that. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now, spoiler alert, in case you don't know the story. Moses is gone for 40 years. 40 years. Now let's push the fast forward button. How am I going to do that? I'm going to search for the word meek. And I want you to watch what happens. The very first one to pop up, meek, is Numbers chapter 12, verses 3 through 4. First time meek shows up in your Bible. And look who it's about. It is about Moses. Now the man Moses was very meek, above all the men which are upon the face of the earth. Does this mean Moses was weak? No. Moses is apparently capable of killing a dude, not weak. Before Moses dies, the Bible says his natural force was not abated, which basically means he's still able to have kids, okay? He's not weak, but he's meek. Something happened, and I'm going to tell you this. It took 40 years, okay? So when Moses comes back, he's transformed. He's gone on the top of Mount Sinai. He has dealt directly with God. He's seen the burning bush. Take your shoes from off your feet. This is holy ground. He says, I am that I am, and I've got a job for you. I want you to go do X, Y, Z. So when Moses comes back, okay, Moses comes back kind of like a person carrying concealed. Now he is meek. He was not meek before, but Moses knows if I get provoked enough, I'm capable of killing me a fool. You see? I will kill a fool. If things get out of hand, if things escalate, I can kill somebody. I've done it before. I know I can do it again. It is now part of who I am. I will kill me a fool if I need to. But I'm not going to do it at the wrong time. What made Moses the meekest man on the earth at that point, he wasn't before, was that he knew what kind of evil he was capable of. I am capable of murder. So instead of rejecting that and putting that off into some place of denial, like I've repented of this and I will never do it again, that's not actually the right attitude towards something like that, because that's not authentic. You lose authenticity, you lose genuineness, you come across as virtue signaling, you think you're being a good Christian. To everybody else, you stink like a virtue signaling hypocrite. Everybody else can smell that on you when you do it. The way to do this is to integrate this into who you are. So now, I am capable of killing somebody. This is part of me. I accept this as part of me. In people who have done this, you will notice that their face is slightly hardened. Not in a bad way. Not like they have RBF. But their face is tempered and weathered a little bit. You'll notice that you want to look at people like Joe Rogan. When he's talking to people on his show, when they disagree with him, there is no fear when he's experiencing pushback. There is no intimidation. One of the reasons for that is Joe Rogan is a trained and competitive fighter. He can handle himself very well. If things were to escalate into something physical, I'm sure he's quite confident that he would physically dominate and be able to stop and if necessary, kill the other person with his bare hands. That's not even up for grabs. And what that does, it enables him to remain calm, not be egoically attached. He doesn't have to borrow power, see? If you've listened to when we've had Doug Gustafson come on the channel, he talked about the psychological effect of borrowing power from an ideology. He doesn't have to borrow power from an ideology. He doesn't have to borrow power from a certain belief system, from Calvinism, from believing that God is sovereign. He doesn't have to align himself with anything outside himself. He is fully integrated, And he's got the power as part of who he is. And he knows that. He's not arrogant about it. He's not prideful about it. It just is. He's got that integrated. You notice the same thing if you ever studied Jocko Willink. Okay, Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL. He's got a podcast too. He helps businesses learn leadership tactics to make them more successful. And he is also a jiu-jitsu expert. And he has been in combat and he's taken lives of people. He knows he is capable of killing. He can kill with a weapon. He's done it. He can kill with his bare hands. He has the skill set to do it. He's obviously visibly strong. He's disciplined. Discipline equals freedom, he says. Very disciplined person. So if somebody's pushing back on something he believes in, he doesn't have the need to feel attached to a particular ideology, like Baptist theology, once saved, always saved, Calvinism, God is sovereign, total depravity, united open theist. No, he doesn't care about any of that. Not that he doesn't care about it, but he doesn't feel the need to be egoically attached to it because he is fully integrated with who his shadow is. He's integrated. He knows what his shadow is capable of. And it's part of who he is. It's in his conscious mind. He knows it's there. It's not something he's in denial about. He doesn't lack genuineness or authenticity. And he's not virtue signaling and coming across as something that he's not. He doesn't smell like a hypocrite. People who are virtue signaling, they stink like a hypocrite. You can tell what they're doing. So it might be interesting to study some people that are like this, who have fully integrated their shadow, who are carrying around with them in a very known way the capability to kill and to destroy and to mangle. I mean, that capability is just a split second away from being called upon and enacted should they ever need it. But they're meek, and they have strength under control. Moses was meek because he knew he was capable of killing a dude, killing a fool. And it's like walking around concealed where since you know what you're capable of, you don't constantly feel the need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to prove to you my beliefs are superior to yours. I don't need to prove to you that I'm strong. I don't need to prove any of this stuff. I know what the situation is, and if you need to be shut down, I'm the guy to do it. And that's just how it is. There's no pride in that. It's just how it is. I just know that's how it is. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen the part of me that kills other people, and it's now part of me. It's part of who I am. And I restrain it, and it doesn't get out of control.